In Exploratory, you have the Data Wrangling Steps section at the right-hand side, which records all the data wrangling operations you have done to clean and transform your data, so that you can see what you have done at the later times and you can update them if needed. Now, these data wrangling steps are very powerful. There are 4 things that would make your data wrangling life better: copying steps, caching step data, disabling steps, and exporting step data. Let's start with the first one, copying the steps. So here I have airline delay data 2016 September. And now I have added data wrangling steps. So right hand side, starting from data import to separating columns, I have 6 data wrangling steps to clean up the data, transform data, and so on. And now later on, I have imported this similar data but except for the August data. These 2 data sets are basically the same, but inside the data is different. For example, this FL date column, this is for August data. And as you see though, for example, this column, I need to change the data type, and then maybe I need to get state information, the city information, and so on. And which I actually have done it by adding these steps. So I don't want to repeat that. So in that case, I can select all these multiple steps by pressing the Shift key. And then one of the icons says copy steps. So if I click on this, now the steps are copied. And then I can go to another data frame to where I want to run the exact data wrangling steps. And then select from the step menu, and then there's a menu called paste step. And this will copy those 5 steps at the right-hand side. And as long as those column names are same, that all the data wrangling operation will go smoothly. And for example, I'm basically creating calculations, joining with another different data frame, uniting the multiple columns, and so on. All the operations being done or reproduced just on a different data set. So that's the data wrangling steps copy. The second is a data wrangling step cache. So this is actually very convenient. So for example, these steps, to run all the data wrangling steps takes some time, but something like this is not really noticeable. But imagine you have a bunch of steps, so some of the steps takes a long time depending on what type of data wrangling operations you have. At this point though, if I close this project, and what happens is each data wrangling step have the data set in the memory. But when I close the project, then the data in the memory will be wiped out. So that means when you open this project and open this same data frame, what is going to happen is it's going to take that source step data and then put that data in the memory. Then it will run all these data wrangling operations. And that could be annoying, depends on what data wrangling operation you have. It might take some time. If we don't want to wait for those, and then all you need is just the last step of the data, or in particular data step, then you can actually cache that step. Any step, you can cache it. For example, at this point, I'm going to just cache it at the last step, so that next time I open this data frame, it will start from there. So there is an icon, it says cache data for this step. When I click, and what just happened is not just the change in the color of the step, but also take that data set and then save it in a hyper-performant and hyper-condensed file on the disk. So which means when I close this project, and not only wiping the data from the memory, but I also keep that cache data untouched on the disk. So that means if I open this project and open the same data frame, and it will start right away from this step, because what Exploratory did was to get that hyper-performant and hyper-compressed data from the disk and put that data in the memory right away, and then start from there. So that's why you almost no time for waiting. So I recommend you to cache the step, whatever the step that takes extra time or is kind of a slow step, that you don't want to repeat every time you come back to this data frame, then you can cache that step. Well, then what happens if you change some of the operations, some of the calculation? Because this is cache data, right? So basically you're looking at this kind of fixed state of the data. Then if I go to this step, and then let's say if I'm going to just add some simple calculation, for example, multiply 10 or something like that. And if I run it, at this point, this step added an extra column here. And then you see here, the cache step is now yellowish color. That's because the cache data is stale. In order to refresh that cache, two things you can do. One is to remove the cache and then cache again. Or simply though, if I click on this cache step, you see this run button, you just click on this run button, and then that will run any preceding data wrangling steps and then recreate that cache with that latest data. Now, the third one is disabling steps. Now here I have a filter step right here to keep all the data that is greater than departure delay time is greater than 0, right? But what if I want to see all the data without this filter and see the difference between with filter and without filter? And we can do it by simply disabling this step to see the result of without this particular step. Or I can click on enable step to see the data with the filter. This is much more useful than deleting the step and then recreating that step and bring it back again. And by the way, for example, something like if you even filter to or like a create calculation step, there can be multiple tokens inside a same step. And then you might want to disable just one of them, not the entire step. And you can do so by moving the mouse on top of the token. And then you see this like a disable icon and you click on it. Only that particular step gets disabled, but the other tokens are still enabled or active. The last not least is exporting the step data. So any step you like, you can export the data at that point. So at this point, let's say I want to export the data that's created at the step 6, then I can go to this export button. This export button or the export button at the top of the table is basically the same. Here you have two types of export options. Number one is exporting data, either as a CSV, Excel, Pocket file, and so on. The other type is saving the data. Instead of exporting outside Exploratory, you want to actually create this data and list it here so that you can start new, maybe data wrangling operations or new data analysis and so on. So here there are two types of save step, one with step, the other without steps. So sometimes if I select this with step and I'm going to just click OK, what's going to happen is the one I have created, basically this is a kind of a copy of the data frame, but all the steps are still there, so I can modify the way I like. But notice that I have all the steps till step 6. Original one had a step 7. That's because I exported the data at the step 6. The other option here was without steps. What is going to happen this one is that if I select this, and then the new data frame gets created based on the original data frame. But there is no steps. So whatever the data we are seeing is a kind of like a snapshot of the step 6 of the previous and the original data. So that's that difference. But nonetheless, you can export the data at any data wrangling step with various options. So those are the 4 powerful features around the data wrangling steps. So data wrangling is a core and a major part of any data analysis and visualization. Exploratory's data wrangling steps are there to help you make your data wrangling operations easier and more productive. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Bye.